Western parties will be in control of Ukraine's parliament after a win in the country's first parliamentary election since the ouster of former President Viktor Yanukovych. Millions of Ukrainians casting their ballots on Sunday. The vote signals a deeper divide from neighboring Russia. President Petro Poroshenko has promised sweeping changes. Today, he'll be kicking off talks. In fact, he's already begun talks, I understand, with Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk's party in parliament. Here to discuss the results is Andrij Dobriansky. He's an executive board member of the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Andrij, good to see you. Is this a done deal? And what does this election represent for Ukraine?
Well, it's historic in several ways. We're still getting the final count. It'll be a couple of days for the last couple of votes to come in. But most notably, you'll notice that there's no Communist Party in Ukraine anymore in parliament. That's very historic for what's happening in Ukraine. Also, the fact that so many pro-Western parties got elected into factions that we think that there might be a three-quarter majority in the parliament for them to do constitutional reforms, which are very needed at this point.
I have to ask you this because a watchdog organization estimated that 2.8 million people in Donetsk and Luhansk were completely unable to cast ballots. That's half the population. Can this parliament really say that it represents all of Ukraine?
Well, it's not only Donetsk and Luhansk, but also Crimea. Don't forget those
people
as well.
Which didn't vote at all.
Didn't vote at all, and about like you said, just under 3 million people who were disenfranchised by Russia's actions in those two eastern oblasts. What we're looking at is 27 less out of the 450 possible parliamentarians, 27 less. So that's like cutting off a medium-sized state in the United States and saying you can't have representatives in Congress.
That's a big deal.
That is a big deal. However, you see the rest of the country coming out in over 50% participation in this election. So there's a big want for people to participate. In fact, there have been reports that people came out to vote in those areas and were shot at by Russian soldiers trying to get to their polling stations in those areas. So even in those areas, there's a want to come out and vote.
A war between government forces and these pro-Russian separatists have led to the loss of 3,600 lives so far.
Absolutely.
Are these new parliamentarians in a place to bring peace to that region?
There's a lot of things on the table right now. A lot of them dealing with, first of all, how we're going to get gas and how we're going to heat the country during the winter. There's a lot of economic reforms that need to be done, a lot of tough reforms for the fact that so many people voted and it was a very positive election for pro-Western reforms. What they're going to do are probably unpopular things, maybe some austerity measures, maybe raising the price of gas, which is very heavily subsidized. So there's a lot of unpopular things that need to be done for the country. In terms of the war effort, you see a lot of people behind it, and in fact, a lot of people who got elected to Congress were actually former members of the military. So,
does this election in Ukraine bring the country closer to the United States? Clearly, it brings it closer to Europe.
Well, I think what you saw from a lot of election observers from the United States, the Ukrainian Congress Committee had monitored over 300 election sites. There were some former members of Congress there as well. You see that the United States, everybody who comes to visit Ukraine understands how tied in together our countries are, how many shared values we have of freedom and democracy. And just as the president of Ukraine said when he visited Congress, Ukraine has democracy. What the struggle now is to keep it. So that's the fight right now.
Andrij Dobriansky with the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Andrij, thanks for your insights this morning.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Del.